stadium that cost your city $55 million to build sold for $583,000, less than the price of a studio apartment in Manhattan, and your city still paying the debt. By the end of this video, you will never look at a stadium the same way again. You're going to find out how a $55 million stadium in Michigan helped bankrupt an entire city, how a $300 million arena built in the middle of the Amazon jungle now hosts weddings just to pay the electricity bill, how the city of Montreal spent 30 years paying off debt from a stadium they built in 1976. You're going to learn the formula that billionaire sports owners have been running on cities for 50 years. The same pitch, the same promises, the same result. And then you're going to see which cities are falling for it right now in 2026. This is the greatest government-sanctioned wealth transfer in the history of professional sports. And it happens every single time, because they know you love your team too much to say no. But one mayor did say no. And what happened to him? We'll get to that. The stadium that destroyed a city. One number that will make you furious. Pontiac, Michigan. Once a city built around a car brand with its own name. In 1975, the city was riding high, and they decided to celebrate by building one of the biggest stadiums on Earth, the Pontiac Silverdome. 80,000 seats, an inflatable roof, an engineering marvel. It hosted Elvis, it hosted the Pope, it hosted Super Bowls, WrestleMania, World Cup matches. Cost to build in 1975, $55.7 million. Every dollar of it from Pontiac taxpayers. And the Detroit Lions? They loved it. They played there for 27 years. They got $800,000 a year from state taxpayers on top of that, just for being there. Then, in 2002, the Lions found a better deal. A shiny new stadium in downtown Detroit. They paid Pontiac $26 million to break their contract and leave. $26 million to walk away from a deal that cost the city $55 million to build. And the city took it. Because what choice did they have? The Lions were gone. The Pistons were already gone. The Silverdome was now an 80,000-seat empty building in a city that was already hemorrhaging people and money. So Pontiac started paying $1.5 million a year, every year, just to maintain an empty building, to keep the lights on in a stadium that hosted nothing for 8 years. By the time the state declared Pontiac in financial emergency and sent in an emergency manager to clean up the mess, the city was $100 million in debt. The emergency manager's name was Fred Lieb. He had one job: stop the bleeding. And the most obvious place to start was the $55 million stadium that had been costing the city $1.5 million a year to do absolutely nothing. So he put it up for auction. One bidder showed up, a developer from Toronto. His offer? $583,000. That's 1.05% of what it cost to build. Less than a single luxury apartment in the city that the Lions abandoned them for. Fred Lieb, the man who approved the sale, later wrote in his resignation letter that, and this is a direct quote, "The Silverdome's cost to taxpayers through the years played a role in the city's dire financial straits." Translation: the stadium didn't just fail, the stadium helped destroy Pontiac. Pontiac's story is devastating, but it's not even close to the worst stadium disaster in history. For that, we need to go to Canada, 1976, and a mayor who made a promise so stupid, it's become legendary. A mayor's guarantee that became the most expensive broken promise in sports history. Montreal, 1976. The Summer Olympics are coming, and Mayor Jean Drapeau is not worried. He stands in front of the press and delivers what will become the most famous lie in the history of public finance. His exact words: "The Olympics can no more have a deficit than a man can have a baby." The stadium alone was supposed to cost $125 million. A futuristic design by a French celebrity architect named Roger Talibert, a swooping concrete bowl with an inclined tower and a retractable roof that was going to be the envy of the world. Neither the roof nor the tower was finished in time for the Olympics. Athletes competed under an open sky while construction crews scrambled around them. The final bill? $1.5 billion in debt, 12 times the original estimate. Montrealers nicknamed it immediately. No longer the Big O, now it was the Big O. And they weren't done paying. The province of Quebec paid that debt off in November 2006, 30 years years after the Games ended. A generation of taxpayers who were children when those Olympics happened were still paying for them as adults with kids of their own. But here's the part that's almost darkly funny. After they finally paid it all off, the roof started failing. The current roof rips 50 to 60 times a year. Events get canceled if more than 3 centimeters of snow are predicted. And the price tag for a new permanent roof? Nearly $1 billion more. The Big O no longer hosts any professional sports team. It sits in Montreal as a monument to what happens when a politician makes a promise he has no idea how to keep. So we've seen a city go bankrupt in Michigan. We've seen a province bleed for 30 years in Canada. But what happens when an entire country, a country that hosted not 1, but 12 new stadiums, gets it catastrophically wrong? Welcome to Brazil. A $300 million stadium in the Amazon that now hosts weddings, and the story gets worse. When Brazil won the right to host the 2014 World Cup, the government made a decision that defies all logic. They decided to build a brand new, world-class stadium in Manaus, a city of 2 million people deep in the Amazon rainforest, 4,500 kilometers from Rio de Janeiro, accessible only by plane or by a 5-day boat ride up the Amazon River. Manaus had no top-flight football team, no tradition of hosting major international matches. The local club played in Brazil's 4th division, drawing crowds of a few hundred people. None of that mattered. The stadium got built anyway. Original budget, $120 million. Construction in the Amazon is not easy. Humidity buckles steel. Heat strips color from seats. Most materials had to be shipped from Portugal. The final bill, $300 million. 2.5 times over budget. 4 World Cup games. That is $75 million per game in one of the poorest regions of Brazil. The chief of the local Satere Mawe indigenous tribe said it best at the time. For the indigenous communities and favela dwellers, it's hard to see so much money spent on the stadiums when there is such hunger and poor health. After the World Cup, the stadium hosted 11 events in the first 5 months. KISS skipped Manaus on their Brazil tour because the rental costs were too high. The local league stopped playing there because it was too expensive to operate. Maintenance costs, $250,000 every single month, paid from public funds. They considered turning it into a prison. They didn't. Today, it hosts weddings. A $300 million World Cup stadium, now available for your wedding reception. And Manaus wasn't even the worst of the 12. In Brasilia, the capital city of Brazil, they built the Mané Garrincha Stadium at a cost of $900 million, triple the original budget. It became the world's 2nd most expensive soccer stadium. Brasilia has no professional football team. After the World Cup, the stadium was used as a bus parking lot. In Cuiabá, the Arena Pantanal cost $215 million, nearly double its budget. After construction was found to be faulty, the stadium closed for repairs. When reporters went to check on it, they found homeless people living in the locker rooms. The mayor of Rio de Janeiro later admitted, on record, Brazilians have not benefited from the tournament. The World Cup still makes them angry. There is regret that we even staged it. His own office estimated that corruption at all 12 World Cup venues accounted for 30 to 40% of final construction costs. Brazil is an extreme case. But here's the thing, it's not a uniquely Brazilian problem. It's not even a uniquely poor country problem, because right now, in 2026, the richest sports league on earth is running the exact same playbook on your city, with your money. The exact 3-step con that every sports owner runs on every city, every time. Here is the formula. It has never changed. It works every time. Because it exploits something politicians cannot fight, your love for the game. Step 1. The threat. The team owner announces, with great sadness, that the current stadium is no longer adequate. It's old. It's embarrassing. Other cities, better cities, have offered to build something magnificent, and unless this city steps up, the team will have to go where they're truly appreciated. This is not a football decision. This is a hostage negotiation. The hostage is your team. The ransom is $1 billion of public money, and it works because it's real. The St. Louis Rams moved to Los Angeles in 2016. The San Diego Chargers followed in 2017. The Oakland Raiders went to Las Vegas in 2020. The threat is not a bluff. Step 2. The promise. The owner unveils the economic impact study. Tens of thousands of jobs, hundreds of millions in annual economic activity, a revitalized neighborhood, tax revenue that will pay back the public investment many times over. Every single single one of these studies is wrong. In 2017, the University of Chicago Booth School of Business asked some of the world's top economists, including 7 Nobel Prize winners, whether stadium subsidies are likely to return their cost to taxpayers. 83% said no. 11% weren't sure. Just 4% said yes. Here's why the math never works. A typical NFL team employs about 125 to 175 full-time staff. Game day workers, another 2,000 people, for about 4 hours, 10 times a year. That's not economic development, that's a seasonal side gig. And when fans spend money at the stadium, that money was already in the local economy. It just moved from a restaurant downtown to a hot dog stand inside the stadium. Net new economic activity, close to zero. Step 3. The transfer. The deal gets done. The public pays, on average, 73% of construction costs for every publicly financed stadium built between 1970 and 2020. The team gets a $1 billion building. The city gets the debt, the maintenance, and the risk. Since 2000, American cities have spent $43 billion in public money on professional sports stadiums. That's $43 billion that didn't go to schools, didn't go to roads, didn't go to hospitals. In Detroit right now, the Little Caesars Arena, home of the Red Wings and Pistons, is subsidized by a bond issue that diverts taxes paid by local businesses. Every year, an estimated $15 million that was supposed to go to public schools goes to the arena instead. That is $15 million every year taken from the children of Detroit and given to billionaires. Remember the mayor I mentioned at the start, the one who said no? Here's what happened to him, and why his story explains exactly why this never stops. Every politician knows stadium deals are bad and signs them anyway. In 2020, Stan Kroenke, the billionaire owner of the Los Angeles Rams, completed SoFi Stadium in Inglewood, California. He paid for the entire $5.5 billion himself. No public subsidy, no hostage negotiation, no economic impact study. It is one of only 3 NFL stadiums in the country funded entirely by private money. If the wealthiest team owner in the NFL can build his own stadium, why are cities still paying for everyone else's? The answer is politics. Pure, ugly, rational politics. Here is what politicians know. Voters who lose their team blame the politician who let it happen. Voters who gain a stadium credit the politician who delivered it. The economic analysis doesn't matter. The 30-year debt doesn't matter. What matters is the headline on election day. So yes, there was a mayor who said no. In Green Bay, Wisconsin, one of the smallest NFL markets in the country, the Packers are publicly owned. No billionaire owner, no relocation threat. The team belongs to the community. And guess what? They built their own stadium improvements. But Green Bay is unique. Everywhere else, the game is rigged. The owner has leverage, the politician has fear, and the taxpayer has a bill. Right now, in 2026, the Tennessee Titans are getting a new $2.1 billion stadium. Taxpayers are covering $1.26 billion of it. The Buffalo Bills' new stadium? Taxpayers paying most of the $1.4 billion tab. And more deals are being negotiated in Nashville, Chicago, and Oakland, with cities trying to outbid each other for the privilege of handing billion-dollar assets to billionaires. The playbook works because the math is invisible and the game is loud, and they're counting on you not doing the math. Here is the simplest way to understand the stadium scam. An NFL team brings its host city between 1/3 and 1/20% of local economic activity. A supermarket brings more foot traffic in a week than a football stadium brings in a season. But a supermarket doesn't threaten to move to Las Vegas if you don't build it a $1 billion building. The Pontiac Silverdome was demolished in 2017. The 127-acre site now hosts an Amazon distribution warehouse. The people of Pontiac traded a $55 million stadium, paid for by their grandparents, for a fulfillment center paying $18 an hour. Meanwhile, the city is still rebuilding decades later. Montreal is currently being asked to spend nearly $1 billion more on a new roof for the Big O. 48 years after a mayor promised the Olympics couldn't run a deficit. The arena in the Amazon jungle is hosting weddings. And right now, in your state, in your city, a politician is meeting with a sports owner, looking at a glossy rendering of a stadium that will revitalize the neighborhood, create thousands of jobs, and pay for itself many times over. You've seen this movie. You know how it ends. The question is whether enough people see it clearly enough, loudly enough, before the ink dries on the next deal. Share this video, because the next city on that list might be yours. If this made you angry, good. It should. Hit subscribe because we cover exactly this kind of systemic government failure every week on City Exposed. And drop in the comments, which city do you think is about to get scammed next? We read every one.